and they need like 10 doses a day. So it's like we only have like enough for like the maximum is only for like 3 patients. So it's like, of course, we're constantly running out of this. So it's like seeing these things where like operationally they're not working very well, and just trying to learn more and more about the process of what goes on the back end. And then I got the opportunity to be part of, in pharmacy, they call it, or in, like in healthcare, they call it informatics. And essentially, it's just kind of the technical side behind like all the different softwares that are going on, between the dispensing cabinets, our electronic health record, medication administration record, and just kind of how all these pieces that kind of involve drugs, learning about those softwares, and then I got the chance to kind of go full time into that space. And that's where I kind of started working with a lot of developers. And I was kind of like, my role is kind of like being a middleman between the purely clinical side and the purely technical developer side that doesn't have any sort of clinical background other than just kind of working in the space. So I kind of was that middleman to go between clinical and technical. And so, um, working with developers, was part of it for sure. And then another part of it was like, that gave me the opportunity to work from home. And working from home kind of allowed me to kind of have a lot more free time because I didn't have to spend like 45 minutes to an hour commuting each way. So with that free time, I'm a curious person. I started with trying to trade some meme stocks, and that didn't really do very well. And then really just I've been aware of like crypto from the very beginning of Bitcoin, but it's like, okay, this is speculative. It only has value if people agree that it has money, which I mean, or has value, which is true for most everything. But there wasn't super strong use cases back in like 2014, which is when I kind of really first started becoming aware of it. And so I kind of ignored it. But one of the, and like personal finance has always been like a big passion of mine too. So when one of the podcasts that I listened to mentioned what a stable coin was, that was the kind of the key that kind of drew me into cryptos, because learned about DeFi, and it's like, okay, well, this makes sense. Like I see why this is a thing, which has to be kind of the future. So that's basically how I kind of got into crypto in general from being a pharmacist.
No, that's cool. It's funny when we were first, onboarding people into DeFi, I've talked to multiple people that are, from all walks of life, and a couple have been doctors. And, back then that was when the metaverse was going to be such a huge, playground, and it's probably still will be, just not
Yeah.
its time. But do you foresee a world where there might be a decentralized, pharmacy business where you can actually, dispense, um, scripts, on a block, in a blockchain based environment, and, it gets filled to, I guess local pharmacies. Is that a thing that could possibly happen, or is it too much of a walled garden because of, privacy and PII and that type of stuff, that it would take a privacy focused blockchain, kind of like a ZK or possibly like an Oasis, to make that happen?
Yeah, it's a very significant hurdle, I think, for healthcare, is with the privacy, and really just how much of healthcare, especially in the United States, runs through Center of Medicaid and Medicare Services, CMS.
Mm,
So, I mean, the biggest like payer of healthcare is the U.S. government. So, I mean, anything involving the U.S. government is going to have move at a very slow pace. Um,
good
so
calc
yeah,
on there.
yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I can't. I have no prediction on where blockchain will kind of, if or when, it'll get involved with pharmacy. I mean, the way kind of pharmacy is going right now is so much more towards mail order. I mean, Amazon's gotten pretty big into the space
Yeah.
now, and so with it going more and more, I think online and or like kind of through the mail, um, it kind of makes there might be like a big player like an Amazon that chooses to kind of go in that direction. I could kind of see that where that might be an implementation of it.
I could see that as well, actually. Just knowing what I know about, some of the companies that Amazon's acquired, one of them being PillPack, that I used for quite a bit for mail order. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting idea to see kind of where that would go. I mean, I'm not saying that there should be like a huge Wegovy and Ozempic decentralized thing, but I mean, it's like the thing right now, right? So,
Yeah.
you could see a lot of people kind of going that route if they, you know, anyway, that's way out of the scope of what we're probably talking about. But I mean, it could touch DeFi at some point, which I think is, interesting. So, I did want to kind of dive into that. So you've been in DeFi about as long as all of us here at Beacon since, around 2020, 2021. So, um, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts just on the current DeFi landscape and how you think it's changed in the last, especially in the last 18 months and where you think it might be headed moving forward, being where you are.
Yeah, so I mean, when I got in, it was I think either I think I got it first like started in like April 2021. I was messing around with like Sushi Swap on like mainnet,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, this is so much money in gas because this is like right before like hitting all-time highs, and there's so much froth within Ethereum, and that like gas prices were crazy. I was paying like 100 Gwei or whatever for all these transactions. Um, so like I mean that's why, and then like within a month I've like kind of found Polygon, and that's how I found Beefy. And that was like right before I got in, like maybe like 2 weeks before Titan Iron Finance hit like peak froth. And so what I came into DeFi was just crazy, crazy, crazy Ponzonomics everywhere. Like everything was a Ponzi. Like nothing had any sort of, nobody was like building any sort of like sustainable business or sustainable tokenomics model. Like it's just hype, 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 Ponzi. Hope you get out before everyone else gets out. So that's, I mean, that's what I came into. Um, I liked Beefy because it kind of took, it's like you didn't weren't exposed to that high inflation token. You were just selling it constantly for like the actual assets you cared about. So that's like, I mean, I of course did see like 6% daily on Titan Matic or Titan or whatever, and like got in on that too. And I did get burned pretty quickly and pretty severely on that. But even someone who's been, I consider myself to be like a very logical person. Like sometimes the numbers just get so crazy that you kind of lose your sensibility sometimes. So I basically had to get burned to be like, yeah, there's a reason why you knew this was like sustainable. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just got to pay your tuition to the School of Hard Knocks to really get the message.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely know that feeling. I've been through that experience a couple times.
Yeah.
I did want to ask since you work, at Beefy, one of the core team members, how did you get involved with Beefy? What is that like?
Yeah, so I mean, I found like I was in the Polygon DeFi Discord, and
Yeah.
somebody mentioned like, oh, I'm using Beefy, and so I kind of like followed it along and I checked it out, and I was like, okay, this sounds good. And then I was just in there, I was asking some questions, like I wanted to like be able to actually track the yield that's like showing up on the UI. Like I want to see that I'm like really getting this yield. And there was somebody who Polygon Dex was the name of the kind of the yield dashboard that he had built just as a another BC user who wanted to be able to see his gains. And he made that community tool. And so I was like, hey, how do I see this? And I found out about that, and just kind of learn more about that. And um, so I was asking a bunch of questions, and then I saw people in the Discord asking the exact same questions after me. And so it's like, oh, I kind of know the answers to these now. So I would just answer the questions, and sometimes I'd answer them incorrectly, and get corrected by one of the Beefy core team members. And okay, I'd like to take notes and remember that for next time. And just kind of kept building my knowledge that way, just like hanging out in the Discord all the time. And then also I've always been interested in kind of actual kind of the fundamental side of like the token, the BC token. It's like, okay, So you stake this and you basically just get a share of the protocol revenue. But you got the revenue that was generated on that chain. So I was trying to visualize how much revenue is actually be generated on each chain. It's like, okay, it's like I know I've got like there's like I found out how to use like Beefy's APIs to get like the total amount of money like in the Beefy vault versus the earnings pool, and like how that share determines how much of the revenue they're getting, and using like the APRs. And I was like, okay, I built out this Power BI report, which is super web too, because that's what I've used in my day job. But I built out this Power BI report, which gave me a snapshot basically of point in time, like this is how much revenue is being generated by the protocol on a daily basis. And so I started like posting that, and I think that kind of got me noticed. And then another thing was that I was frustrated that there would be a vault on Beefy's UI that showed really high APY. And so like I try like start getting positioned to deposit into that vault, and just like realize that nothing's happening. Like there's like no harvest happening. And then I go and look at the underlying protocol, like, oh, this farm's over, but it's still showing up as Beefy is active. So I was really frustrated by that. And so it started with me just kind of compiling a list of all these vaults, which I saw, which had issues. And like, hey, devs, like, do something. Like, it's like, like these vaults need to be retired. Like, it's like super frustrating, like, for me to make these transactions for nothing in return. And so I kind of did that for a while, and then eventually I was like, okay, if somebody wants to like spend some time to teach me how to do this, like I'll just do it myself. And so somebody spent probably like 30 minutes to an hour to show me how to do like a GitHub PR. I was like, okay, like this is super. I'm just editing some like JSON files. Like this is nothing like super advanced. And so once I understood like the GitHub process, it's like, okay, this is super easy. Like I can do this. And so I just kind of took that on as like my responsibility, because of something that frustrated me. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna like fix this. And so like after doing that for like a few months, July of 2022. So I had kind of been in the Discord for just over a year. I'd probably been doing this dashboard and like doing this like vault retiring process for probably like 3 or 4 months, is when I became an actual core team member. And then in November is when I became like an actual like salary compensated contributor. And so
So
now it's
November 2022 or 21?
yep, 2022.
Okay.
Yeah. So July 2022 is when I became a core team member, and then November 2022 is when I started like getting salary. So coming up pretty close on 2 years since I've been on the core team. And Beefy is like 3.5 years old. So it's like at this point, like I've been part of Beefy longer than I haven't, as far as how long Beefy's been around.
Yeah, pretty much. So, how do you think that working at Beefy has influenced the way you look at DeFi, both and obviously as a worker, but as an investor?
I mean, a big thing is if I'm looking at like a specific token and whether or not like, I mean, like I was kind of already doing this, but I feel like it's just kind of enhanced it, was trying to actually look for fundamentals of the token and tokenomics. And then the other massive thing though with it is very heavily Beefy influenced with security. Um, like I learned like exactly what Beefy checks before they'll list either a vault or a platform. And then kind of eventually got to, and so like it's like, okay, like if it's not listed on Beefy, it's like there's a good reason it's not listed on Beefy. Like I was like, I'm not going to touch it. Like so there's probably something that's not exactly safe if it's not listed. And once I got to learn all the things it looked at, like I kind of also got to the point where I could look at it myself. And so looking at any of the contracts, seeing what functions could be called on those contracts, like is there a rug function, and if so, is that rug function like only callable by the owner? It's like, okay, if it is, like who's the owner? Is it a time lock, or is it a multi-sig, or is it just an EOA that like anyone can rug you at any point in time, like with no warning? And so Beefy requires a 24-hour time lock to be an owner if the contract has any of those types of functions. And so and then Beefy also actually has like a time lock monitor in our Discord as well. That like any of these owners that have access to privileged functions, if they were to post something, like if they post anything, it pops up in our channel on our Discord. And then if it was something that was like malicious, like it's like be able to kind of alert everyone. And if it's like a master chef farm, which is malicious, has a malicious transaction proposed, we'd be able to call panic and withdraw the funds from that farm before that actually took place.
And it has to be a protocol as a master chef.
Well, I mean, the same thing goes for like tokens. Like these days, especially, that's become more and more common over the years. Is that most contracts are like upgradable proxies. So
Right.
looking at those proxy admins, so that could be the token themselves, it could be the LP itself, it could be the chef. But for the actual panic function to be able to actually help with anything, it would have to be like master chef or somewhere where your tokens are staked that's malicious so
Yeah.
that we can like withdraw them back. But if there's something malicious that happens like on the actual LP contract, Beefy doesn't have, in order for Beefy to be able to intervene, it would require too much access basically. Like we would have to have spend approval um,
Right.
on your assets in order to be able to do that, which is not something that we want because we don't want to be someone with all these potential like unsafe things available to us either.
And it kind of centralizes the process as well, where the
Yeah.
user doesn't have complete control. So I get that. I didn't realize that Beefy's influence went that deep. We'll talk about that more in just a second. But um, not to give you guys a little bit of a humble brag about this, but Beefy has very little competition. Much like some other protocols out there, some that have faded, unfortunately, due to, whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's really only just a couple prominent auto compounding protocols that are left. I mean, Yield Yak being one of them, but they're not on nearly as many chains as you guys are. Why do you think that Beefy has had such little competition over the last 3 years?
I think there's quite a few things. One is just relentless shipping. Like our devs are constantly shipping new vaults. Like the number of vaults that we're adding every week, just I don't think even comes like no way it comes even close to that. So we're offering, I think, the most opportunities by far. So we hit a very wide array of users who aren't exposed to maybe some of these other opportunities, whether it be on different blockchains or different underlying protocols, because we care about the actual contract security. We don't care really about the team. Like if you can't technically do anything malicious, then it doesn't matter if anyone knows who you are. Like safe contracts are safe contracts. So and also, I mean, like our track record's huge. Like as from a security standpoint, the fact that we've gone this long without any major security incidents, like
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's I think that's massive, especially for anyone who's of like an institutional type size. Like security is going to be very important to them. I think a lot of people think like, oh, just the lowest fees is the best, but you get what you pay for. And so we actually did have to kind of increase our fees from the 4.5%, which we originally had, to nine and a
So
half percent,
nine
which is
and a
now,
half.
which is still like on par with the other two that are still around. Like it,
Yeah.
a BC was basically a massive discount for a very, very, very long time, and I think it's still an incredible value today. But yeah, it's just kind of like, and then like RU, I think, especially as a multi-chain protocol goes, like RUI, like you don't have to like connect your wallet to see anything. Like you can see all of our blockchains from the same UI, and we have really good like filters, so you can kind of narrow down to the types of investments that you're comfortable with or that you're seeking. So between the UI, our track record, just relentless shipping, relentless business development, um, I think all that's really kind of led to our success and kind of makes us stand out from others who have come and gone in the space.
Yeah, and you guys are very well familiar with how much we talk about Beefy and, use them on a frankly weekly basis when we're looking at for anyone who's in our mastermind group or on our total value locked group, watching the call, we cover Beefy specifically because it is such a good UI. Uh, and it's just easy to get into. I mean, the new version of the Zap, obviously the Zap was a little limited for a minute because it couldn't do just about everything, but now that it can do just about everything except for what balancer,
Balancer is pretty
is
much the big one.
yeah, that's amazing. I mean, to be able
Yeah.
to close that gap to where you can literally come in with just about every asset in your wallet and zap in with one click is just it's just fantastic. So um, I did want to ask a little bit about that since you mentioned about the vetting process. Not sure how much you can speak to that, but it's a question that we do get a lot on our calls. So, what is the standard for protocols who want to be listed at Beefy? Like, is it more of a they reach out to you, or is it you reaching out and looking, constantly looking at new protocols that are coming out in this space?
It goes both ways. We absolutely get tons of protocols who reach out to us and
Yeah,
want to obviously be listed on Beefy, and a lot of times we kind of have to walk through with those protocols like, hey, these are the things which are really suspicious or really have like it's like this is just a big security concern. So we've like instructed protocols like how to do time locks, how to make time locks the owner, make those time locks owned by multi-sig. So a lot of protocols basically have gotten like security tutoring from BT before they do ultimately get listed on BT. And of course, like we're always both like people on our team and then also just the community coming in and giving exposure to protocols that maybe we haven't seen before. And then we'll go and we'll vet those protocols and any tokens which are involved with it. And so I don't have any like real numbers on like what percentage is which, but it's a pretty good balance of kind of both of those things being how we end up listing new projects. And then more of kind of the things of like what we're looking for. I kind of touched on a good bit with like the owners of any contract. And then like for tokens, which we're listing, especially with all the meme coin craze, which is still going on pretty strongly. Um, just looking for also kind of like who actually holds this token.
hmm
If there's like more than 5% of the supply in a single like multi-sig or a single EOA, like it's like okay, that's way too risky. Like they could just dump this supply that they're sitting on and basically take all the value from the LP. So if it's not actually a well-distributed token, we don't do it. If it's like a bridge token, we have to look at what bridge is being used and who like is this an actual trusted bridge? Is this a safe bridge? Because we actually were on the Oasis blockchain for like a month before
hmm
basically we kind of exposed that the primary like bridge to that chain was fake. Like they were just printing tokens. Like they didn't
Oh
have actually the
no.
assets on the other chain to back up what they were printing on that chain. So we basically by exposing that killed a lot of TPL on the entire blockchain. So yeah, like maybe like bridges are a huge part, and we show in the UI if the token that you're using is a bridge token. If so, like what the bridge is that's used to bridge that token.
Okay. Are there any
Yeah.
new blockchains that you can speak to that are upcoming? I see that Fraxtal is a new add to the list. So, obviously the the list is growing. We had the Elk Finance team on last week, and they're on 31 chains, which I still think is crazy because I can't even name 22 chains. So the fact that they're actually on 31, I'm like, what are the others but in any case, uh obviously, I'm sure you guys get a ton of those requests as well. Can you speak to what that vetting process is like? Like, is it more of a sustained TVL or, um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of opportunity, like that there's actually safe protocols on that blockchain. And then again, with the bridges, like there has to be good bridges. So if
sure,
layer zero is there or Axelar, or if they're like a roll up with a really secure native bridge, um, like looking for those bridges. And then we need like certain like infrastructure. It's like we need there to be like Gnosis safe or some other comparable multi-sig because so much of our stuff runs through multi-sig. And then again with the bridge structure infrastructure, Like if Circle is on that blockchain, that's great because we love their bridge for protocol like revenue bridging.
Mm,
Pretty much all of it, because like we use depending on which blockchain, like we use Axelar to get from some blockchains to like to get back to like Polygon, and we'll get it from Polygon to Arbitrum, and then basically everything goes into Arbitrum right now, and then from Arbitrum to it's going through Circle CCTP bridge.
yeah.
So like basically just having something which is really low friction for getting revenue back to Ethereum is massive for us. And just yeah, and then like actually having like developer support for, because every blockchain just functions a little bit differently, even though they're all EVM. So making sure we have people that we can reach out to if all of Beefy's infrastructure will work correctly on the blockchain. And yeah, that's kind of what it is. And something which is now kind of allowing us to be expanding to more blockchains here in the future is that before it's like we needed there to be kind of the classic Uniswap V2 style LPs with farms on top of those, because that's what like we acquired on there to be this external revenue source beyond just the LP. But now that we have our concentrated liquidity manager for like concentrated liquidity management, that because there's a lot of blockchains right now which we're not currently on, because basically all of the yield potential is through concentrated liquidity. And so
Mm,
without there being a manager there to build on top of, then we don't like have that, like it's not an option for Beefy, but that's where we're in our beta now. It's going really well. So that opens up even more blockchains to us. So I think in the next probably 3 months, we'll probably launch 3 to 6 months, we'll probably be launching at least like that many blockchains. Um,
okay.
so yeah, there's definitely gonna be a lot more coming.
Yeah, I was wondering with, some of these innovations like OP's, super chain. So obviously
Mm-hmm.
Mode is one that I'm curious if you guys are curious about because I think there's a lot of good projects on Mode. TVL's
Yeah, I
growing quickly
mean,
on that.
especially with the team behind like Velodrome, they've been expanding to a lot of those OP super chains,
Yeah.
and so we don't have our Slipstream concentrated liquidity manager live yet, but that's going to be coming
Hmm.
pretty soon too. So yeah, there's a lot more places which are going to be good opportunities for us. So yeah, that's definitely one that we're definitely well aware of. Scroll's another one that we've definitely had our eye on for a while. And I think that was kind of been another one of those things like, oh, it's like a lot of concentrated liquidity kind of really on this chain. And yeah, there's definitely a few more that we've got a very close eye on.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm hoping, with some of these other novel innovations like with Polygon Zag layer that will make things a lot easier for you guys, I think, to just interoperably just optimize, fairly frictionlessly. I think that'll be really really cool to see as how it all plays out, I guess, in the next 6 months. Um, going back to security, I think that's one that a lot of people that are going to be listening to this call, are curious about, and that's the one thing that head and shoulders to me, puts Beefy above just about every other protocol out there is that you guys have had very few exploits, if any. I don't think any at all. Now that I think about it, um, what do you think do you just have a large security team on that? What has been the success to the security there, and um, what can our investors, take to heart, knowing that, Beefy has that high standard? Uh,
I think it's just not wavering on our standards. There's been a lot of like really, really, really high yield potential that a lot of other protocols are like going right like a moth to the flame and building on top of it, and just like we won't do it. Like if it doesn't meet our security standards, we're not going to do it. The only exception that really I think exists for that is a lot of these liquid restaking tokens.
right.
They're owned like all of their contracts are owned by like an EOA instead of a time lock. And but we do list those, but there's a very big warning on there that hey, these are things which don't meet all of our safety criteria, and like we list exactly what the reason is. So if protocols like don't want that to see that on Beefy, if they fix the thing which is causing that, then we'll definitely take that warning away as well. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just really sticking to kind of best practices, and there's basically a lot of other protocols that have like told us at conferences like, hey, like we basically like adopted your best practices for security, and it's like thank you so much for kind of like one of the protocols actually was just talking to Westo in Dubai. It's like this happened like this morning. Literally just said like, hey, we're doing exactly the same safety protocols that you guys do, and so and we that was like a protocol that we basically kind of walked through. These are the things we check. These are the things you need to fix to make your own protocol more secure. So
No,
it's really
that's
good
great.
to see that we're having an influence on other people to also have higher safety standards.
Yeah, and that's something that we preach as paramount here in all of our groups. So, um, if you have like a security tip that people should be doing that you maybe think that, amongst all of the craze that's going on right now that they shouldn't, that they're not doing, what do you think that one security tip would be?
See if it's on Beefy. No, but seriously, I mean, look at our documentation. Like we have a section on what we look at, and so every single thing that we look at, it's on there. So try to become more familiar with how to do these checks yourself. Get used to looking at get used to looking at smart contracts, and kind of, especially now, like you can just like punch the code into Chat GPT and be like, hey, can this rug me? Which is, of course, is not like any sort of level of standard, but it's definitely better than nothing. Like Chat GPT will tell you, like, hey, this function can be called by the owner, and this is what happens if that function is called. So the really like kind of basic security stuff, I think anyone can do without a whole lot of having to learn how to do it. So um, I mean, really, yeah, just look at those things. Looking at holders of tokens too, I think is really important too. Um, or if something is also like high inflation, seeing where that inflation, who's benefiting from that inflation too, because sometimes like initially supply will be well distributed, but like 40% of like emissions are going to the dev team or something like that. So yeah, just kind of look at all those different things.
Yeah, those are all really important, I will say. Understanding, the nuances of tokenomics and supply and, who holds the token. So yeah, good for hitting on those. And again, overall, congrats on all the success for Beefy. We're all, as you know, we've been huge fans for a long time. The UI is fantastic. I remember you mentioning to me that, you have a ton of UI developers there, which is awesome. Um, I did want to ask, what's a feature that Beefy doesn't have right now that a lot of people have asked for? I will start with, for me personally, I think if you uh, had a way to bridge within the UI, so
Mm,
if I'm like on Arbitrum and I have most of my funds there, but wow, the stable coins at base are super hot right now. To be able to bridge directly within the UI, I think would be very sweet. And I guess you could do that with CCTP, or I'll link you up with the Elk
yeah.
Finance guys because they have a bridge as a service thing coming up soon. So, yeah, just kind of wanted to kind of ask that question, see, I guess from a roadmap perspective, if there's anything like
Yeah,
that.
so anything roadmap wise, like I don't really like Beefy generally doesn't really give roadmap. Like when
Yeah,
I
yeah, no,
talked
that's
to you
fine.
in Denver and I talked to you about CLM, that's
Yeah.
basically the one time that we've ever really kind of like, hey, this is something which we haven't shipped yet, which is coming. I could say just personally, some of the things that I would love, especially with some of these, like if I want to play with like a little bit of money and some of these like really super degen like opportunities, if there was like a limit withdrawal slash like
Mm,
limit zap out, like that would be amazing to me. It's like, oh, it's like, okay, I'll get into this, but if it drops like 10% in like value, I want you to zap out to USDC or something like that. Like, I think that would be pretty incredible.
that
Um,
would be amazing. Almost like a stop loss in a way, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or a take profit in another
yeah.
way. If
Either
you,
way, yeah,
yeah, having a recurring take profit mechanism that allows you to do that, um,
yeah.
that would be awesome. Because I
Like I
think,
would want the most complicated version of like a trailing stop loss.
yeah,
Like
yeah, for
if it
sure.
goes up 200%, then I want it to get out pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah, So I mean, that's
No,
just
that's
something that
great.
I personally would like, and we've talked about it, and it's just all about prioritization.
Oh
So
yeah. So with that said, what do you think is the biggest priority right now? Is it shipping more core features or expanding to more chains?
I mean, it's both. Like, especially the I guess I would say core features first, because it's like especially like CLM, like that allows us to expand to more chains, and that allows us like that opens up so many more opportunities, both for Beefy users and Beefy as a protocol. So like I still beyond like super thrilled with how well our beta is going. Like we had like over 1.2 million in within 1 week of a beta product where we only had seven uh, like investment opportunities. Like that was unreal to get that level of usage already. So I'm super excited about that. And um, like it's basically like launching a whole nother protocol. Like there's
Hmm.
other protocols where this is all they do. And so for us to like launch this in addition to everything else that we're already doing, it's huge. And like we generally try to focus on the things that we do well and keep doing them better. And so this was our biggest kind of break from doing just the one thing. So yeah, it's like just really focus on doing both these things really good, really well. And if there is something which nobody's doing well enough, then we may take that as an opportunity to kind of expand into another kind of type of product.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. I full disclosure, I myself, a lot of the team, a lot of our community are all participants in the beta for concentrated liquidity. It's going really well, I think. I'm enjoying the process.
Yeah.
Just kind of talk about that. So, for anyone who's not familiar with what concentrated liquidity management is, ultimately it's they're optimizing a Uniswap V3 concentrated liquidity pool where you can specifically focus the liquidity that you're providing for two assets between a specific price tolerance within where their price curve is, which is why it's called concentrated liquidity. It gives you a little bit more efficiency in terms of earning yields back on
Mm-hmm.
swap fees between the two assets. So, you guys do it a little bit differently
Yeah.
than some others to try and make it an auto compoundable process. Not, I mean, Gamma and plus they still auto compound your position, but yours is done a little bit differently. So, I'm curious, because I know that you mentioned I'll have you explain the full process if you don't mind about just breaking down how it works for most people. But I did want to have a follow up on exactly how difficult is it to do the limit orders for that. So yeah, go ahead and just explain for everyone how they basically work.
Yeah, first to kind of expand a little bit more on just concentrated liquidity management as a whole is like if you're doing it yourself, you set your own range. You set how wide you want it to be. You can kind of it doesn't have to be centered on the current price. You can kind of have it be more tilted towards one way if you think the market's going to kind of move in that direction. But like as the price moves, you may or may not like still be generating fees. And I think my headphones are dying. So hold on, let me switch over my
Yeah, you're
audio
fine.
before this. Yeah.
While it does that, just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Just to recap, we're here with EPETE from Beefy. Uh, Long-standing community. Happy to talk about them, and we feature them quite a bit in our community. So excited to have EPEAT here, who's also becoming an ingrained member of our community. So happy to have EPEAT here talking about Beefy and of course his foray into DeFi investing as a pharmacy doctor.
Yeah, so
But
are you able to hear me?
oh wow, you're really clear on audio there.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, so if you're doing this yourself, and the market moves, especially with like arbitral, like the ARB token, that moved really aggressively in the past week.
Yeah,
So that was something where it's like, if you're doing this yourself, like you're going to be out of range in a heartbeat. And so like having to constantly monitor that like is just it's like a full-time job and it's still happening even when you're asleep. So it's not something that a lot of people really probably have done. Like I had myself have never manually provided liquidity on like Uniswap because it's just I was like, this is way too much work. And so basically protocols will move positions and like do rebalancing as like the market kind of changes. But the key difference that CLM does compared to what other protocols do is that once we fill up as many tokens as we can 50-50 into the main position, we actually have a limit. It starts out kind of like a limit order, but because it's just one-sided with whichever token we have more of. And so it's just going to be like one tick outside what the current price is, and then goes to the same range as the main position. So it's like half the size. It's like basically half the range of the main position because it's just on that like one side with the one token. But it's still going to be collecting tons of fees. And that alt liquidity is basically more concentrated. So it's going to capture if the price goes in that direction, it actually captures a greater share on like a like proportional basis than the main position does because it's basically twice as concentrated. And so instead of like actively rebalancing, like when you get more of one token, like actively rebalancing by selling the token and paying the fees and like instantly realizing that impermanent loss, we kind of have a passive rebalance with this alternate position, which instead of paying fees to rebalance is collecting fees to rebalance. So it's like a 2x kind of difference there, like not paying and collecting instead. So I think is especially at narrower ranges that makes ours is much more performative for that reason. And really, we just had a great test with the which I mentioned, like the ARB, really volatile price. Like we had a very good, and there's users who like went and like did comparison between us and like other protocols, and they said like, oh yeah, Beefy substantially outperformed in this situation with a really volatile market. So it's super excited. I'm going to be really happy when we kind of complete beta and we have our full build out there, which includes being able to basically zap in to position, because we don't allow right now deposits if it's not like 50-50. We only allow deposits for one token until it gets to back to 50-50, and then we'll accept tokens in 50-50 between both of them. But the Zap will just kind of take care of all that. So that's going to be available when we get out of beta, and we're hoping to get out of beta sometime in May. So I'll say May-ish is when we're hoping to get out of beta. And then the other thing is the performance tracking. Like we've built out a subgraph just for this product. So every CLM position, we have really robust stats. So just getting those stats into a good UI for it is the other thing that we're working on right now. So we have all the stats, we just are still working through making sure we display them correctly. So
I think it's feedback that we've given for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like, yeah, there's like super obvious things, and just trying to make sure we stay listening to things that we don't already know about and aren't already working on as well. And then of course just going more protocols, because you have like ones that are Algebra, which is mostly the same, but it's like a little bit different. And then you've got Slipstream with Velodrome, where you don't actually get any of the fees. They give you Velo, and then Aerodrome soon, same thing. So making sure we're working with all these different protocols as well. And we're also in 11 days, I think we're kicking off our third audit for the product with Satora, and they do formal verification, which really just makes sure like they test all of the math involved in the contracts on chain. So that's what that kind of formal verification is. So like making sure the math is math in a very real world. So yeah, that's kind of the other thing that we're going to be waiting on before we leave beta.
No, that's fantastic news, and let that be a lesson for all protocols and builders. You know, involve the right people from an auditing standpoint at every point in your process so that there are no holes left for exploit later on down the road. So yeah, that excited that you guys include multiple audits at multiple points in the process. That's really important for you guys to do, especially there at the beginning. So um, you mentioned algebra, you mentioned Slipstream. Uh, do you guys intend to possibly work with Camelot?
Oh
Or I
yeah,
get never
absolutely.
they use algebra. They use algebra, never mind.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
um
especially yeah. So we actually just the long-term incentive program for
mhm.
Arbitrum.
Yeah.
Those votes just concluded, and we got very very overwhelming approval. So we've got funds coming, and so we're for sure going to be working with all those exchanges on Arbitrum. So yeah, we haven't had Camelot previously
Mhm.
because their token rewards are a little bit more complicated than just like giving you
Yeah.
tokens which are instantly liquid.
Yep.
So there hasn't been like a great way for Beefy to kind of integrate with them. But now that we have our CLM, like we're going to be able to work with them extremely well, and so we'll be super excited to finally launch with Camelot. And yeah, we're going to be we've got ARB on its way, and we're going to be giving it away. So and then we're
You heard it
also
here,
working
guys. That's amazing.
with all the other protocols which have gotten grants too, and being able to there's going to be multiple different ways to get ARB. And we're also talking to other blockchains, of course, too, and any other incentives, and talking to a certain stablecoin issuer too.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's going to be a lot of different ways to earn with Beefy, um, just as there always is.
That's fantastic. Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out EPETE's first visit with us on the Wednesday call, the TVL call, we talked about Moo Beefy, and definitely recommend everybody, if you want to be involved with the Beefy ecosystem, have high conviction in their service like we do, you become a Moo Beefy staker as well to help support the protocol, and get a piece of the rev share that comes around. So
Yeah, and that just happened like 53 minutes ago that we
there we
did
go.
the feedback chart. So I'm actually pulling up my Dune dashboard now to
Understood.
to see what that
If you
looks
want to
like.
share that, you're more than
Oh
welcome
yeah,
to
for
put in the
sure.
chat. We'll make sure. And this is something that you had showed to me, some time ago, where you created a Dune dashboard, tracking Beefy revenue, which is good. It's good for transparency and
Yeah,
whatnot.
I probably added quite a few things too since you looked
Oh,
at it.
really?
Mm-hmm. All right, here is the link. All right, so put it in the chat here. Uh,
Excellent.
looks like it's not been refreshed yet, even though I have this on a schedule. The schedule is like going early. I'll have to talk to Dune about that.
Understood.
But yeah, so yeah, and I'm also really excited because Dune just supported Linea yesterday.
Okay.
So now I've got my per chain breakdown. Um, I've got Linea on there as well. So yeah, so it's not the highest week that we've had since we did our revenue overhaul, but it is the second highest, and it really wasn't that great of a week really for the crypto market. So super excited that we're
Been a little crazy.
still really really strong revenue even with the kind of crazy market, and there's still like 20% APR on Beefy staking. So that's
There you go.
still super exciting too.
Yeah, no, I've been really excited about seeing that go up. Personally, as a Moo Beefy staker on the vault on Optimism. So if you guys aren't doing that, you guys that's definitely a great move to do, in my personal opinion. Support one of the best protocols in all of DeFi. So
I think there
um
will come a point in time where people actually care about fundamentals, and I want to be positioned before that happens.
fair. But at least you guys are transparent about the revenue. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of people that aren't. So that's great. Um but
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, we've always been as completely transparent as we possibly can. And then this is just kind of adding another level to that transparency of also just making it easy to look.
exactly. So I want to be respectful of your time. We're getting close to the top of the hour, but definitely want to talk about some DeFi trends that you're most excited about as an investor. Obviously, there's a lot of people talking right now about BRC20 and runes, specifically with the Bitcoin halving. Uh, do you happen to have any plans on what you're looking, to do, not as a person of Beefy, but just as EPETE, the person, the investor, with regards to
Um,
does it affect you at all?
it's not affecting me much personally. I kind of have read a little bit about it. One of my favorite people to follow on Twitter is Eric Wall, and he's
Yeah,
kind of really central to a lot of this that's going on.
yeah.
So I've definitely seen a lot of stuff that he's working on with EPETE, and it seems super cool, but it just also seems like not very UI UX great experience compared to what I'm used to with
Yeah.
EVM, which I think also makes it a very lucrative potential as well, is
Mhm.
just having that higher barrier to entry. I like it would make a lot of sense to pay attention to that for sure. I just not personally putting much focus into it.
So how do you feel about things like real world assets or some of these new roll-ups and liquid restaked ETH? That's really been a large part of the narrative for the last 4 months. Let's call it 4 months now.
I
Give
mean,
we're in April.
DeFi TVL as a whole getting to where it is now is very largely driven by the liquid restaking, just between Eigenlayer themselves and then all the other protocols they're building on top of Eigenlayer. That's driving so much of the TVL right now. Very interesting what will be happen when if or when these points actually become worth something. Eigenlayer continues to say that they're never going to be worth anything, but everyone else seems to think that that's not going to be the case. And especially since I think they raised like $100 million, like there's going to have to be some sort of way for those investors to be able to realize their investment. So um, I certainly expect eventually those points will be worth something. Um, so I'm very curious to see when that happens, what happens after that happens, especially for all the protocols they're building on top. Because Beefy also is building on top of them as well, and we're working with those protocols to make sure that our vaults are getting points too. Because any of the ones that have points when you're looking at them on the UI, like that means we're working with those protocols to make sure that our vault users are also eligible for those points too. So yeah, very curious to see how that goes. Real world assets. I've always felt like DeFi was the future of finance. Like it's a meme, but I also 100% believe it.
Oh, as do
Um,
we.
yeah, I mean, just having used traditional finance and using decentralized finance, like there's like different barriers, but they're technical barriers. They're not like tons of like legally required middlemen that each take a big chunk of like the cut, and everyone's trying to make a profit in between you and your investment. So I'm super bullish on real world assets coming on chain. I mean, BlackRock coming on chain, like I don't think it gets more massive than that. Like
Yeah, and Larry Fink
so,
calling it a
yeah,
flight to safety.
yeah. So yeah, I mean it's crazy. Especially as more and as they become more and more tokenized, they'll want liquidity for those tokenized assets, and Beefy will certainly be there to work with them on that too. So
Yeah, and again, it's crazy to see. I mean, obviously competition is good, but just how little competition Beefy truly has in this space. So, I look forward to seeing, more Beefy products, I guess. I'm ready for,
yeah,
the Beefy phone or,
I
whatever else you got, the Beefy wallet. Oh my gosh.
I'm very excited for Q2, and really
Yeah.
just the whole year. I think I've never been more excited. I know I've said this like 1,000 times, but it still continues to be true that I sort of pay attention to like price action of the
Hmm.
market as a whole, but I my my time frame is just so long that it's just noise. Like I can't see me ever not being in DeFi, um, just more and more as time goes on.
Obviously not as a rep of Beefy, but are there any technologies you're specifically bullish on moving forward in DeFi?
It's yeah, I can't really say anything super specifically. I mean, just I think the blobs for L2s, like
Sure.
that's I feel like that's just such a great thing to really just make DeFi more accessible to more and more people, making the cost so much lower, which is great for us as a protocol, but just more and more parts of the world with less than like a lower amount of money. Like the blockchain just becomes ever more accessible to more people, and a way for people to get exposed to assets investments, which they never would have the ability to invest in otherwise. I think that's just um, that just kind of makes me bullish, just like humanity, to have a more level playing field for people.
Yeah. No, that's great. Uh, yeah, I'm excited to see everything that goes on. We've been a staunch supporter of Beefy for a long time. We'll continue to do so, and excited to, bring more of our communities together, coming down the road. So I wanted to thank you for your time. I want to be respectful of your time. It's been about an hour, and I know that we've talked about quite a few things. So opening up to you if anything you want to plug, anything at all, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna mention our Calcin Trade Liquidity Manager again, CLM. Definitely love for you to come check it out and give us your feedback. Let us know what you like, what you think could be better, and just definitely be on the lookout for more opportunities, especially since we've got a pretty sizable grant that's going to be on its way, and we have to give it away. So please come use our products
Yeah.
and get some of that.
And it's currently just on Arbitrum, right?
Right, yeah. So our beta
Okay.
right now is on Arbitrum, um, and so that's the main focus. But we'll be expanding to other chains here pretty soon. I mean, the way it's built, like it doesn't require anything that DeFi in general doesn't require. So it's like any chain that Beefy's already on, like this is completely compatible, as long as there's concentrated liquidity AMMs on that blockchain. Beefy CLM will be there too.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, EP, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for representing Beefy. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us, and look forward to the next time we see you, hopefully very soon on another Wednesday TVL show. So
All
as a
right,
rotating
great.
panelist.
Thank you
Have a
for
great
having
day,
me on.
everybody. Of course. Yeah. Anytime. Happy to always have you get your takes, and always good to see another Gator. Go Gators, right?
Go Gators.